Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched the stars through the main screen. He had been in space for 6 months now, leading humanity's first mission beyond their home galaxy. His crew was small but skilled. Lisa Carter ran the engines and fixed anything that broke. Dr. Sam Brooks kept everyone healthy. Amy Foster handled all the talking with other ships and worlds they might find. The ship was not the biggest or fastest that humans had ever built, but it was strong and could travel very far from Earth. Jake looked at the readings on his screen. They had found something big ahead of them. It was not a planet or a star. It was a fleet of ships, more ships than Jake had ever seen in one place. The ships were huge and dark, with strange designs that looked nothing like human ships. They moved in perfect lines, like soldiers marching in a parade. Amy turned to face Jake from her station. "Captain, I am getting signals from those ships. They want to talk to us." Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear she was worried. This was the moment they had all been waiting for and dreading at the same time. "Put them on screen," Jake said. He straightened his uniform and tried to look like the kind of person who could speak for all of humanity. The screen flickered and then showed a face that was definitely not human. The being had gray skin that looked like metal and eyes that glowed with a blue light. When it spoke, its voice was deep and cold. "I am High Commander Vexitar of the Zephyrian Empire. You have entered our space without permission. Identify yourselves." Jake stepped forward. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human ship New Horizon. We come in peace, seeking to make contact with other intelligent life. We did not know this space belonged to anyone." The alien's eyes narrowed. "All space belongs to the Empire. All worlds belong to the Empire. All peoples belong to the Empire. You are now part of the Empire. You will follow our laws and serve our goals. This is how it has always been." Jake felt his stomach drop. This was not how he had hoped first contact would go. "With respect, High Commander, we cannot accept that. Humanity values freedom above all else. We choose our own path." The alien stared at Jake for a long moment. Behind Vexitar, Jake could see other beings moving around what looked like a command center. Some looked like Vexitar, but others were different. There were tall, thin beings with 4 arms. Short, furry creatures with big ears, and things that looked like they were made of crystal. "You do not understand," Vexitar said slowly. "Choice is not possible. The Empire brings order to chaos. The Empire brings peace to war. The Empire brings civilization to primitive worlds. You will join us, or you will be destroyed." Lisa stepped up beside Jake. "What if we prove we are not primitive? What if we show you that our way works too?" Vexitar made a sound that might have been laughter but had no joy in it. "Your tiny ship with its handful of crew? You think you can prove anything to the Empire that rules 10,000 worlds?" Dr. Sam Brooks joined them. "Sometimes the smallest things can teach the biggest lessons. On our world, we learned that freedom and choice make people stronger, not weaker." Amy was typing quickly at her station. "Captain, I am reading massive energy signatures from their ships. They have weapons pointed at us." Jake raised his hands. "We do not want to fight. We want to understand each other. Is there no way we can talk about this?" Vexitar leaned forward. "You speak of understanding, but you do not understand power. You do not understand order. You do not understand your place." The alien paused. "But perhaps there is value in showing you these things before you join the Empire. You will come aboard my ship. You will see how a real civilization works. Then you will understand why resistance is pointless." Jake looked at his crew. They all nodded. They had come this far to meet aliens and learn about the galaxy. This was not what they had expected, but it was still a chance to learn. "We accept your invitation," Jake said. "But we will not change our minds about freedom." Vexitar's expression did not change. "We shall see, human. We shall see." The screen went dark. Amy turned to Jake. "Captain, what have we gotten ourselves into?" Jake looked out at the alien fleet surrounding them. Each ship was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands, but Jake had not come this far to give up on everything humanity believed in. "I don't know," he said quietly. "But we are going to find out." The transport ship that came for them was bigger than the New Horizon. Jake and his crew found themselves walking through halls that could fit 10 humans standing side by side. The walls were dark metal with lights that pulsed in patterns Jake did not understand. Alien beings moved past them without looking. Some were like Vextar with gray skin and glowing eyes. Others were the four-armed beings Jake had seen on the screen. A few were the furry creatures with big ears who kept their heads down and moved quickly. Their escort was a Zephyrian who introduced himself as Sub-Commander Kylan. He was younger than Vextar, and his eyes did not glow as brightly. He walked stiffly and spoke in short sentences. "Follow me. Do not touch anything. Do not speak to anyone. Do not look around too much." Lisa whispered to Jake, "This place feels wrong. Everything is too clean, too quiet. Where I come from, engine rooms are noisy and messy because people are working and thinking and trying new things." Dr. Sam was looking at the other aliens. They passed. "They all look tired," he said quietly. "Not sick, just tired. Like they have given up on something." They entered a massive room that stretched further than Jake could see. In the center was something that hurt to look at directly. It was round and spinning and made of light and metal at the same time. Sparks flew from it, and the air around it shimmered. Vextar was waiting for them. "This is the quantum core of our flagship. It powers our weapons, our shields, our faster-than-light travel. Yesterday, it was damaged in a battle with rebels from the Outer Rim. Our best engineers say it will take 4 weeks to repair." Jake looked at the spinning thing. "It is amazing. We have nothing like this on Earth." "Of course you do not," Vextar said. "You are primitive. But you claim your way is better than ours, so I will give you a chance to prove it. Fix our core in 12 hours. If you succeed, we will listen to what you have to say about freedom and choice. If you fail, you will join the Empire without further discussion." Lisa stepped forward and stared at the core. "Can I talk to your engineers? Can I see their repair plans?" Vextar waved his hand, and 3 Zephyrian engineers approached. They looked nervous. "These are Senior Engineer Zonkar, Engineer Velmar, and Technician Grison. They will show you what they know." The senior engineer began explaining the problem in words Jake could not follow. Lisa listened carefully and asked questions, but Jake noticed something strange. When Lisa asked Technician Grison a question, the alien looked surprised. When she asked for his opinion, he looked around nervously before answering. Amy had started talking to some of the four-armed beings who were working nearby. They were called Thrax, she learned. They did the dangerous work of handling the core's energy flows. One of them, who gave his name as Click Click Buzz, told her they had ideas for fixing the core faster, but no one ever asked them. Dr. Sam was treating a furry alien who had been burned by energy from the core. As he worked, the alien told him that his people were called Drakmari. They had been conquered by the Empire 50 years ago. Before that, they had been inventors and builders. Now they just did what they were told. Lisa gathered everyone together. "I think I understand the problem. The core is not really broken. It is just unbalanced. Like a wheel that wobbles because the weight is not spread evenly." Senior Engineer Zonkar shook his head. "Impossible. The core is built to Imperial specifications. It cannot be unbalanced." "But what if the specifications are wrong?" Lisa asked. "What if there is a better way?" The Zephyrian engineers looked shocked. No one had ever suggested that Imperial specifications could be wrong. Lisa turned to Click Click Buzz. "You said you had ideas. What are they?" The Thrax engineer looked around nervously. "We think the energy flows should move in spirals, not straight lines, like water flowing down a drain. But we are just workers. Our ideas do not matter. They matter to me, Lisa said. Show me. For the next 6 hours, Lisa worked with engineers and workers from all the different alien races. She listened to everyone, even the furry Drakmari who cleaned the work areas. When a Zephyrian technician suggested something, she considered it carefully. When a Thrax worker had an idea, she tested it. When a Drakmari cleaner mentioned something he had noticed, she asked him to explain. Sub-Commander Kylen watched all of this with growing confusion. In the Empire, orders came from the top and flowed down. Workers did not talk to engineers. Engineers did not ask cleaners for advice. But somehow, this human female was making it work. Jake helped by keeping everyone organized. Dr. Sam made sure. Everyone stayed safe and took breaks when they needed them. Amy made sure everyone could understand each other, translating between different languages and explaining ideas. With 1 hour left, Lisa made the final adjustments. The core stopped sparking. The air stopped shimmering. The painful light became steady and bright. Test it, Lisa said. Senior engineer Zonkar ran the diagnostics. His eyes grew wide. The core is not just fixed. It is 40% more efficient than it was before. How is this possible? Lisa smiled. Because we listened to everyone, because we used all the good ideas, not just the ones from important people. Because we worked together instead of just following orders. Technician Gryson stared at the readings. My idea about adjusting the flow patterns actually worked. Someone listened to my idea and it worked. Click, click, buzz was making excited clicking sounds. The spiral flow design we suggested for years finally got tried, and it worked. The Drakmari cleaner who had noticed the uneven wear patterns was grinning widely. I helped fix the Great Core. Me, a cleaner. Sub-Commander Kylen felt something he had never felt before. For the first time in his life, someone had asked him what he thought, instead of just telling him what to do. The human captain had treated him like his opinions mattered. It was a strange feeling, but he liked it. When Vextar arrived to see the results, he stared at the improved core for a long time. This should not be possible. Our way has worked for thousands of years. Jake stepped forward. Your way does work, but maybe it could work even better if everyone had a voice. Word about what the humans had done spread through the fleet faster than Vextar wanted. In the mess halls and work areas, beings who had never spoken to each other before began to whisper. The Thrax workers told the Drakmari maintenance crews about how the human female had actually listened to their ideas. The Zephyrian technicians quietly shared how strange it felt to be asked for their opinions instead of just their obedience. Amy Foster found herself in the middle of these conversations. Her job was communication, so she naturally started talking to everyone she met. She learned that the crystalline beings were called Velthari, and that they had once been master artists and builders before the Empire conquered them. The insectoid creatures called themselves Chithan and had been peaceful farmers before being forced to work in the Empire's weapon factories. In the ship's main cafeteria, Amy sat with a mixed group that would have been impossible under normal Imperial rules. There was Kylen, the young Zephyrian sub-commander who had been assigned to watch the humans. Next to him sat Zara, a Velthari, whose crystal body sparkled with different colors when she was excited. Across from them was Rex, a Drakmari whose fur was marked with the scars of many battles. A Thrax named Spinner completed their circle, her forearms moving in complex patterns as she talked. Tell us more about this democracy thing, Zara asked, her crystal form glowing soft blue with curiosity. On your world, everyone gets to choose their leaders? Amy nodded. Not just choose them, but change them if they do bad jobs. And anyone can try to become a leader if they think they can do better. Rex's ears twitched with disbelief. Anyone? Even someone like me? I am just a maintenance worker. On Earth, we have had leaders who started as farmers, shopkeepers, and teachers, Amy said. We believe that good ideas can come from anywhere. Spinner clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. But what about chaos? What about conflict? The Empire tells us that without strong control from the top, everything falls apart. Amy considered this. We do have conflicts. Sometimes people disagree strongly about what to do. But we found that talking about our disagreements and finding solutions together makes us stronger than just forcing everyone to agree. Kalen had been listening quietly. On my home world, before the Empire came, we had councils where everyone could speak. I was too young to remember them clearly, but my grandfather told me stories. He paused. The Empire said those councils were primitive and inefficient. Maybe they were sometimes, Amy admitted. But inefficient does not always mean wrong. Sometimes the fastest way is not the best way. Dr. Sam joined their group, carrying a tray of the Empire's standard nutrition blocks. I have been talking to the medical staff, he said. They are all very skilled, but they only treat symptoms. When I asked about preventing illness by improving working conditions or reducing stress, they looked at me like I was crazy. Prevention is not cost-effective, Kylan said automatically, then stopped. That is what we are taught to say. But when you ask why we are taught that, no one has a good answer. Jake found them an hour later, deep in conversation about something that would have been unthinkable a few days ago. They were planning. Not planning to follow orders or complete assigned tasks, but planning how things could be different, how things could be better. Captain, Spinner said, using her universal translator to speak in English. We have been wondering about something. If humans have all these freedoms, why do you still have soldiers and police and people who give orders? Jake sat down with them. Because freedom does not mean chaos. We choose to follow certain rules because they help everyone live better lives, and we choose leaders to help organize things. But the important word is choose. But what if people choose badly? Rex asked. What if they pick leaders who are cruel or stupid? Then they can choose different leaders next time, Jake said. And if the leaders try to prevent new choices, then it is the duty of everyone to resist them. Kylan leaned forward. Resist? You mean fight against your own leaders? Sometimes, Jake said quietly. My people fought a war against a king who would not listen to them. We fought another war to free people who were enslaved. We fought again to stop leaders in other countries who were killing innocent people. Freedom is not free. Sometimes you have to fight for it. Zara's crystal body flickered with different colors. The Empire tells us that resistance brings only death and suffering. They show us what happens to worlds that rebel. I have seen those worlds, Dr. Sam said sadly. The Empire turns them into examples of what happens when you choose wrongly. But maybe the problem is not that those worlds chose wrongly. Maybe the problem is that they never really had a choice at all. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a group of Zephyrian guards. The lead guard, a massive being with scars across his gray skin, pointed at Kylan. Sub-Commander, you are ordered to report to High Commander Vextar immediately. The humans are to return to their quarters. As they were separated, Kylan caught Jake's eye. In that look, Jake saw something that gave him hope. He saw doubt. Not doubt about whether the Empire was strong or whether resistance was dangerous. Kylan was beginning to doubt whether strength and fear were the only ways to build a civilization. Back. In their assigned quarters, Jake's crew gathered around their small table. Lisa was sketching improvements to Imperial technology. Amy was writing notes about the different species they had met. Dr. Sam was reviewing medical data he had gathered. They are starting to question things, Amy said. Not just Kylan, but others too. That Thrax engineer asked me what it would be like to choose her own work assignments. The Velthari artist wants to know if she could make art for beauty instead of just Imperial propaganda. Lisa looked up from her sketches. The technical people are the most interested. They have so many ideas they have never been allowed to try. It is like they have been building machines with one hand tied behind their backs. Dr. Sam nodded. The medical staff, too. They know how to heal bodies, but they have never been allowed to heal societies. Some of them are starting to understand that healthy people need more than just medicine. Jake stood and looked out their small window at the vast Imperial fleet. We came here to make contact with alien life. I think we are doing something much more important. We are making contact with alien hope. But what happens next? Lisa asked. Vextar is not going to let us spread these ideas freely. He must know what we are doing. Jake nodded grimly. He knows, and he is going to try to stop us. High Commander Vexitar stood in his private chamber, watching security recordings of the humans talking with his crew. What he saw disturbed him more than any rebel attack or fleet battle he had ever faced. The humans were not using weapons or threats. They were using something far more dangerous. They were using ideas. He had watched Kylian's interrogation with growing anger. The young sub-commander had not broken any direct orders, but he had done something worse. He had started to think for himself. When questioned about his conversations with the humans, Kylan had not apologized or shown proper shame. Instead, he had asked questions. Why was it wrong to listen to different ideas? Why should good suggestions be ignored just because they came from lower-ranked beings? Why should anyone be forbidden from trying to improve their situation? These questions were like a disease spreading through his fleet. Vextar had built his career on absolute obedience. The Empire had conquered 10,000 worlds because everyone knew their place and followed orders without question. But now, his own officers were beginning to doubt. Vextar made his decision. He would make an example that everyone would remember. The humans would be executed publicly, and anyone who had been contaminated by their ideas would be punished. The fleet would learn that there was only one way to think, and that was the Imperial way. He called for his senior staff to gather in the main briefing room. When they arrived, Vextar could see the tension in their faces. Word of his decision had already begun to spread. The human contamination ends now, Vextar announced. They will be executed at dawn ship time. Their vessel will be destroyed. Any crew member found to have been influenced by their poisonous ideas about freedom and choice will be reassigned to punishment duties. Sub-Commander Kylan stepped forward. High Commander, I request permission to speak. Vexitar's eyes blazed brighter. You request? You do not request anything, Sub-Commander. You obey. Then I refuse to obey, Kylan said quietly. The room fell completely silent. In the 1,000-year history of the Zephyrian Empire, no officer had ever spoken those words to a superior commander. Several of the senior staff stepped back, expecting Vextar to kill Kylan where he stood. But before Vextar could act, other voices joined Kylan. I also refuse, said Engineer Zonkar. And I, added Communications Officer Tilwen. The humans have done nothing wrong except show us a different way to think, said Medical Officer Haxton. Destroying them for that makes us no better than the rebels we fight. Vextar stared at his officers in shock. Half of his senior staff was defying him. This was not rebellion driven by anger or fear. This was something far more dangerous. This was rebellion driven by hope. You will all be executed alongside the humans, Vextar snarled. Guards, arrest these traitors. But when the guards moved forward, they found their way blocked by other crew members. Thrax workers stood beside Zephyrian officers. Velthari technicians linked arms with Drakmari maintenance crews. For the first time in Imperial history, the rigid hierarchy that kept everyone in their proper place was breaking down. Dr. Sam Brooks had been summoned to treat a sick crew member when the confrontation began. He found himself in the middle of a crowd of beings who were protecting their officers from arrest. When he saw what was happening, he stepped forward. High Commander, Dr. Sam said respectfully, these people are not rebelling against you personally. They are choosing to follow their consciences instead of orders that they believe are wrong. Conscience is a luxury the Empire cannot afford, Vextar replied. Order requires obedience. But what if order built on fear is not really order at all? Dr. Sam asked. What if it is just controlled chaos waiting to explode? Jake Morrison arrived as the crowd was growing larger. Lisa and Amy were right behind him, escorted by guards who seemed unsure whether they were prisoners or guests. When Jake saw the standoff, he understood immediately what was happening. "High Commander," Jake called out. "I challenge you." The room erupted in surprised voices. Vextar turned to stare at the human captain. "You challenge me? You are barely more than a primitive animal." Jake stepped into the center of the room. "I challenge you to single combat under the ancient laws of honor that even the Empire cannot ignore. If I win, you will listen to what we have to say about freedom and choice. If you win, we will submit to whatever fate you decide." Vextar's laugh was like metal scraping against stone. "You think you can defeat me in combat? I have been a warrior for 200 years. I have killed rebels with my bare hands." "Maybe," Jake said, "but you have never fought someone who chooses to fight for something bigger than himself." The ancient challenge laws were older than the Empire itself, dating back to when the Zephyrians were just one of many warrior races. Even Vextar could not refuse without losing face before his entire fleet. "Very well, human. We will fight in the traditional way with energy blades until one of us cannot continue. When I defeat you, your friends will die slowly as an example to anyone else who thinks about choosing freedom over order." Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. "Captain, you cannot do this. He is twice your size and has been fighting for centuries." Jake looked around at all the faces watching him. Kylan and the other officers who had risked everything to stand up for what they believed was right. The workers from a dozen different species who had dared to hope that things could be different. Dr. Sam and Amy and Lisa, who had followed him across the galaxy on the slim chance that they might find something wonderful among the stars. "I know," Jake said quietly. "But sometimes one person has to take a stand, even when the odds are impossible. That is what freedom means. The right to choose your own battles, even if you might lose them." As the crowd cleared space for the combat arena, Jake felt the weight of every decision that had brought him to this moment. He had come to the stars looking for new worlds and new life. Instead, he had found something much more important. He had found people who were ready to fight for the idea that everyone deserved a choice. The energy blade felt strange in his hand, humming with power that could cut through metal. Across from him, Vextar held his weapon like it was part of his body. The High Commander's eyes blazed with confidence and contempt. "Begin," announced the fleet's senior ceremonial officer. Jake knew he could not match Vextar's strength or speed, or experience. But he had something the Zephyrian commander had forgotten during his centuries of easy victories. He had people he was fighting for, and they were fighting alongside him in spirit, if not in body. The combat lasted 17 minutes. For 16 of those minutes, Vextar dominated the fight with brutal efficiency. His energy blade moved like lightning, forcing Jake to dodge and retreat continuously. The High Commander's centuries of experience showed in every move as he systematically wore down the human captain. Jake's uniform was sliced in a dozen places. His left arm hung useless at his side. Blood ran from cuts on his face and chest. The crowd watching grew silent as it became clear that their human champion was losing badly, but Jake had not survived 6 months in deep space by giving up when things looked hopeless. He had learned to adapt, to find solutions that others missed, to turn disadvantages into advantages. As Vextar pressed his attack, Jake began to notice patterns. The Zephyrian fought like he commanded his fleet, with overwhelming force applied in predictable ways. In the final minute, everything changed. Vextar made a powerful overhead strike intended to end the fight. Instead of dodging backward as he had been doing, Jake stepped forward and to the side. Vexitar's blade missed by inches, and the High Commander's momentum carried him past Jake's position. Jake's counterattack was not elegant or skilled. It was desperate and lucky and just barely. Good enough. His energy blade caught Vextar across the back, sending the massive Zephyrian crashing to the deck. The silence that followed was deafening. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. The mighty High Commander Vextar lay motionless on the floor, defeated by a primitive human who should have been easy prey. Jake stumbled and nearly fell himself. Dr. Sam rushed forward to help him, but Jake waved him away. This moment was too important to show weakness. Vexitar struggled to his knees, his gray skin pale and his glowing eyes dim. "How?" he gasped. "You are nothing. You have no training, no experience, no right to victory." Jake stood over the fallen commander, his energy blade pointed at Vextar's throat. "You are right. I have no training as a warrior, but I have something you lost a long time ago. I have people I am fighting for instead of people I am fighting against." The High Commander's eyes flickered as he struggled to understand. "I fight for the Empire. I fight for order and civilization." "No," Jake said sadly. "You fight for control. You fight to keep people afraid. The beings in this room are not your enemies. They are your people, and they deserve better than fear." Vexitar looked around at the faces surrounding them. For the first time in decades, he really saw them. He saw the hope in Kylan's eyes. He saw the determination in Engineer Zonkar's posture. He saw beings from a dozen different species standing together instead of cowering separately. "I do not understand," Vextar whispered. "Without fear, without absolute obedience, everything falls apart. That is the way it has always been." Jake lowered his weapon. "Maybe it is time to try a different way." With his final breath, Vextar spoke words that no one expected. "Perhaps you are right, human. Perhaps we lost something important when we forgot how to choose instead of just obey." Sub-Commander Kylan stepped forward as the High Commander's eyes went dark forever. By ancient tradition, command of the fleet should have passed to the senior captain. But everyone in the room looked to Kylan, the young officer who had been brave enough to say no when saying no seemed impossible. "What are your orders, Commander?" asked Engineer Zonkar. Kylan looked confused. "Orders? I think the time for orders is over. I think it is time for choices." Amy Foster had been recording everything for the ship's communications log. Now she looked at Kylan with excitement. "You could send a message to every ship in the fleet. You could tell them what happened here and ask them what they want to do next." "Ask them?" Kylan repeated slowly. "Not tell them? Ask them," Jake confirmed. "Give them the same choice you had. They can stay with the old ways if that is what they truly want, or they can try something new." Lisa Carter was already working at a communication terminal. "I can set up a secure network that lets every ship talk to every other ship. The Fleet Command has been controlling all communication until now, but we can change that." Dr. Sam was treating Jake's wounds while this conversation continued. "Captain, you need medical attention, but first you need to see this." He gestured toward the main screen, which was showing feeds from other ships in the fleet. The news of Vextar's defeat had spread faster than any official communication. On ship after ship, crew members were gathering in common areas, talking, in groups that mixed different species and different ranks. The rigid hierarchy that had kept everyone separated was breaking down as beings who had never been allowed to speak freely began to share their thoughts and dreams. On the Thrax work ships, the laborers were discussing what it would mean to choose their own assignments. On the Velthari vessels, Artists were imagining what they could create if they were free to express beauty instead of just imperial propaganda. On the Drakmari transports, engineers were sharing designs they had hidden for years, afraid to suggest improvements to imperial technology. But the most remarkable sight was on the Zephyrian command ships themselves. Officers who had spent their entire careers following orders without question were asking each other what they really wanted. Some admitted they had joined the military because it was expected, not because they wanted to be warriors. Others revealed dreams of becoming teachers or artists or explorers. Commander Zara Velthari appeared on the main screen from her ship. Her crystal body was glowing with colors Jake had never seen before. "Commander Keelan, we have been discussing your message. My crew has voted unanimously to try this democratic system the humans described." Captain Rex Drakmari's scarred face appeared from another ship. "The Drakmari vessels are with you as well. For the first time in 50 years, we feel like we have hope for something better than just survival." One by one, ships throughout the fleet began reporting their decisions. Most chose to join what they were calling the Free Worlds Alliance. Some decided to remain with traditional imperial ways, and Kylan assured them they would be respected for that choice. A few ships chose to leave entirely, seeking their own paths among the stars. Even that choice was respected, though it would have been unthinkable under the old system. Jake watched it all with amazement. How did this happen so fast? Amy smiled. "Ideas are like viruses, Captain. The good ones spread very quickly once they get started. These people were ready to change. They just needed someone to show them it was possible." Kylan turned to Jake with an expression of gratitude and terror. "What do we do now? How do we make this work? I know how to follow orders, but I do not know how to lead free people." Jake put his hand on the young commander's shoulder. "None of us do. That is why we have to figure it out together." 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of the newly renamed ship Liberty, watching construction crews from a dozen different species working together to build something that had never existed before. They were creating the first Free Worlds Alliance Council Station, a massive structure that would orbit between 3 star systems and serve as a meeting place for representatives from every member world. The station was beautiful in its diversity. Velthari crystal artists had designed sections that captured and refracted starlight into rainbow patterns. Thrax engineers had created gravity systems that let beings from different worlds feel comfortable in the same spaces. Drakmari builders had contributed adaptive living quarters that could adjust to the needs of any species. Even former Zephyrian military designers had added defensive systems, though these were intended for protection rather than conquest. Captain Morrison called a familiar voice. Kylan approached, though he looked very different from the nervous sub-commander Jake had first met. As the first elected president of the Free Worlds Alliance, he carried himself with confidence earned through service rather than fear. "The council is ready for your presentation." Jake nodded and followed Kylan through corridors that buzzed with activity. They passed a group of young beings from various species who were learning each other's languages and customs. They walked by research labs where scientists from former enemy worlds were collaborating on projects that none of them could have completed alone. They saw art galleries where Velthari sculptures stood next to Drakmari paintings and Thrax musical instruments. The council chamber was circular with no single position of authority. Representatives from 47 different worlds sat in a spiral pattern that symbolized how their decisions would flow outward to affect the entire galaxy. Jake recognized many faces from his time on Vextar's flagship. Commander Zara Velthari was there, her crystal form glowing with satisfaction as she worked with former Imperial officers to draft trade agreements. Captain Rex Drakmari had been elected to represent the Outer Rim worlds, and his once bitter expression had been replaced by something Jake had rarely seen in the old empire: hope. Lisa Carter was presenting her latest technical innovations to a mixed group of engineers who were designing improved, faster-than-light communication systems. Amy Foster was coordinating with linguistic specialists to create better translation protocols that preserved the cultural meanings of different languages. Dr. Sam Brooks was training medical teams from multiple species in new treatment methods that focused on preventing problems rather than just fixing them after they occurred. Friends, Kylan called the session to order, using the Alliance's preferred term. Captain Morrison has news from the outer galaxy that affects us all. Jake stood and activated a holographic display that showed star charts extending far beyond Alliance space. 3 weeks ago, our long-range scouts encountered a new threat. The Collective, as they call themselves, is a hive mind species that absorbs other life forms into their consciousness. They have already consumed 12 solar systems and are moving toward Alliance territory. The chamber filled with concerned voices speaking in a dozen different languages. Under the old empire, this would have led to panic and demands for immediate military action. Instead, Jake watched as the representatives began discussing options and asking thoughtful questions. "How long before they reach our space?" asked Commander Zara. 6 months, maybe 8, Jake replied. "They move slowly, but they are thorough. Every world they touch becomes part of their collective consciousness." Captain Rex leaned forward. "What do we know about their weaknesses? How have other civilizations resisted them?" "That is the problem," Jake said grimly. "No one has successfully resisted them. Every species they have encountered has either been absorbed or destroyed." The chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed this information. Finally, a young Thrax engineer named Spinner raised one of her 4 hands. "President Kylan, may I speak?" "Of course. In the Alliance, every voice matters." Spinner stood nervously. "I have been studying the reports about this collective. They succeed because they think with one mind and expect their enemies to think the same way. They plan for military responses and economic warfare and political negotiation. But what if we do something they cannot predict?" "What do you mean?" asked Kylan. "What if we do exactly what we did with the Empire? What if we show them that there is a better way than forcing everyone to think the same thoughts?" An older Zephyrian commander shook his head. "These are not beings who can be reasoned with, young engineer. They are a collective consciousness. They do not understand individual choice." Amy Foster had been listening from the communication booth. Now she activated her microphone. "What if that is exactly why our approach might work? The one thing they have never encountered is a civilization that chooses unity instead of having it forced on them." Jake felt a familiar spark of excitement. "Amy is right. The collective expects resistance or submission. They have never faced a group that is united by choice rather than by force." Lisa's voice came from the engineering section. "If they absorb individuals into their consciousness, what happens if those individuals still remember what it feels like to choose? What if we can plant the idea of individual freedom inside their collective mind?" Dr. Sam joined the discussion from the medical bay. "It would be like introducing a beneficial virus into a diseased system. The concept of choice might spread through their collective consciousness the same way it spread through the Imperial fleet." Kylan stood and looked around at all the faces, biological, crystalline, metallic, and furry, that were focused on solving this problem together. "Are you suggesting that instead of fighting the collective, we should try to cure them?" "Not cure them," Jake said slowly as the idea took shape. "Offer them something better. Show them that they can be connected to each other without losing their individual selves." Commander Zara's crystal form began cycling through thoughtful colors. "The Alliance proves that different beings can work together while remaining unique. We are united by choice, not by force." Captain Rex nodded agreement. "When my people were conquered by the Empire, we lost our identity. But in the Alliance, we kept our culture while gaining new friends and new possibilities." The debate continued for hours, with representatives sharing ideas and building on each other's suggestions. Gradually, a plan began to emerge. Instead of meeting the collective with weapons and walls, the Alliance would meet them with welcome and wonder. They would show the collective what voluntary unity could accomplish. It was dangerous. It might not work. Many Alliance worlds might be lost before they could prove their point. But as Jake listened to the passionate discussions around him, he realized that this was exactly what freedom meant. The right to choose difficult paths, because they were the right paths, even when easier options existed. 3 days later, Jake stood on the bridge of a new ship designed and built by the Alliance. It was not a warship, though it carried defensive systems. It was not a diplomatic vessel, though it carried representatives from every member species. It was something entirely new, a ship built to demonstrate rather than to dominate. "Captain," Amy called from her communication station, "we are receiving signals from the collective advance scouts. They are demanding our immediate surrender." Jake smiled. "Send them our response. Tell them we come not to surrender or to fight, but to share. Tell them we want to show them what we have learned about the power of choice." As the ship moved toward its encounter with the collective, Jake thought about the chain of events that had brought them to this moment. It had started with a simple refusal to give up human principles when faced with an overwhelming force. That small act of defiance had sparked a revolution that freed an entire galaxy. Now they faced an even greater challenge, but they faced it together. Thousands of worlds, millions of species, billions of individual beings who had chosen to stand united while remaining free. Behind them, the Alliance continued to grow and change and improve. New worlds joined every week, attracted by the promise of freedom with security, unity with diversity, progress with respect for tradition. The former imperial systems had become centers of learning and art and innovation. Ahead of them lay the unknown. The collective might destroy them, or absorb them, or ignore them completely. But Jake was not afraid, because he was not facing the unknown alone. He was surrounded by friends who had chosen to share this risk because they believed in something worth risking everything for. "All stations report ready, Captain," Lisa called from engineering. "Communications are open on all frequencies," Amy added. "Medical teams are prepared for any casualties," Dr. Sam reported. Jake looked out at the stars and made his choice. "Take us forward. Let us go teach the galaxy that freedom is contagious."